Okay, welcome today to Reverend Rachel Hollander. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, because I've always called you Reverend Rachel. So, and Maddie is here with her today too. If you want to show off Maddie, Maddie is her a constant companion, darling dog. Love Maddie. So, and today Rachel has this thing that she does that I'm just fascinated with. I think it's just a marvelous way to deal with remembering your loved ones and keeping them in your lives. And she calls it her guardian wall. Is that correct?
Well, it started out as a guardian wall. It's now expanded into the guardian area.
Okay.
Wow.
So it's lovely, her guardian area. So I wanted her to, could you introduce yourself, Rachel, Reverend Rachel, and tell us your inspiration for that and how you got started with it and how it grew.
Sure thing. So, hi, I'm Reverend Rachel. I'm an interfaith, interspiritual minister. And this started because I'm not really sure even when it started. My dad died when I was 12, which was really traumatic for me. And I needed to find ways to keep him close. And so I wore his picture. I still do on occasion, wear his picture in a locket. And I always had pictures of him. And as I've lost people that I've loved in my life, I haven't wanted them to be far away from me. So I just started hanging pictures up. And when I lived in places with fireplace mantles, I could put them up on the wall and then put pictures on the mantle. And then I moved into this place that has no mantle. And of course, the collection has grown because I'm not a young person, and people do die. And my sister Lisa teased me because I said, I made a comment a few years ago. I said, man, I have way too many dead friends. And she said, no, you have too many friends. The more friends you have, the more dead friends you're going to have. So if you want less dead friends, have less friends. I was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do that. So there are pictures up. There's a shelf with photos and mementos, and like I have one of my dad's pipes, and I have gifts that were given to me by people. I have my friend Jimmy's boots, his Timberland boots that he used to always wear, and it's something that keeps their souls close to me, and I feel protected and watched over in a really good way. And it's nice to be sitting on my couch reading, and I look up and I'm like, oh, hey, everybody. You know, I used to joke that when I would visit my dad at the cemetery, that it was like a production of Our Town. I don't know if you're familiar with the play Our Town. In the cemetery, everyone's sitting on chairs and they're all talking about the young woman. And they're like, oh, look how much she's grown and she's coming to see us. And when I used to visit my dad at the cemetery, I used to feel like that. It was like everybody was like, buddy, Rachel's here. Oh my goodness, look, she's got a new haircut. And oh, she brought you brownies. Hi, Rachel. I've always felt this deep connection with souls that are not embodied.
It's interesting you mentioned about Our Town. When my husband Jacques transitioned, we had been very active in theater, and he had a dear friend that we were living in California and he was living in Georgia. And when we called to tell him, he said, oh, can I like facilitate the service? And I said, okay. I hadn't really thought about it up until that point. And he came out with a full-blown production with of Our Town, only written specifically for Jacques. And he was, I can't remember the name of the part. Is it the stage manager? Is that the person that's kind of the narrator? Yeah, he was the stage manager in the play. And I'm getting chills just talking about it now. It was so special because he had people who loved him doing the perspectives of what they knew about him and what they loved about him. And it was such a special way to do the service. I thought it was just beautiful. And yeah, whenever I start to think about the servicers started to get a little sad or something, I think about how positive that was, and what a lovely thing, and a nice way to remember him and remember the thoughts of other people about him.
Well, I like that you said that because so I moved back to Cleveland 4 years ago from Alaska. And since I've been back, I've been, well, before the pandemic, my mom and I were going to a lot of funerals. My mom is in her 80s, it's happening. And what we were discovering was how bad these funerals were. Like they're bad.
Yeah.
One funeral we went to of this amazing woman, they never once said her name. No one said Marsha once. They just said
Wow.
she and her and my mom or my sister. And so I turned to my mom and I said, so we need to work on this because I need to know what you want. And you need to make sure that I'm doing it because we belong to a temple. And of course the rabbi would do it. So over the course of a couple of years, my mom and I created her memorial service. Now, God willing, my mom's in excellent health, so she's going to be here for a while. However, she created this service. And one of the things she wants is a lot of singing. My sisters and I all sing. She wants a lot of singing. She wants a slideshow to the music, the song "The Best of Times Is Now" from La Caja Fall.
Oh,
You know, she wants these happy, uplifting songs and these stories, and no crying. You can cry on your own time, but when we're celebrating her, she wants us to celebrate her. And I love that we have this opportunity to do this, to talk about it and to prepare because, yeah, she would be furious if we had one of those morose, oh, they can be so dreadful.
oh
And
no.
I've planned mine and it's a barbecue. So
That's cool.
yeah.
When my other husband, who died since I had two, when Ron transitioned, I just kind of was at a loss for what to do because we had lived in the moment so much that I wasn't sure where to go from there. So he was good friends with Reverend Michael Beckwith, and he wanted Michael to do something, but Michael lived in Los Angeles and we lived in Maui. And so our dear friend who was kind of helping me out through the time, she said, let me just arrange something here for us. And then we can arrange something at Agape too and fly over there to do that because we lived in California for so long. We had tons of friends over there, and he wanted that. I knew he wanted the service at Agape. So here on the island, it was incredibly beautiful. One of the nurses who had taken care of Ron while he was on hospice here at our house, she was a great person, Ren. She was just incredible. And I discovered that her husband, or he wasn't her husband yet, but her sweetheart at the time, is somebody who does traditional Hawaiian ceremonies. And so my friend contacted him and we decided to do an ash scattering at the beach. And we went, I had really nothing to do with it. She arranged everything, but we went there, and it's the people that showed up were so interesting because we hadn't lived that long here on the island, but it was like everybody who met him really liked him and wanted to do something. So his doctor showed up. Our gardeners showed up, our housekeepers showed up,
Wow.
besides all of our other regular friends too. And then we did have some friends come over, special friends from the mainland. We'd had several during his week here on hospice, and they didn't come back because they kind of celebrated with him while he was still here. But we had people sing, do spoken word, and the service part of it, the person who Kimokea facilitated it, and he was in full Hawaiian regalia with the hakule and the special fabric wrapped around him like they wear for that sort of a thing, and his conch shell that he used to start it. And it was totally in Hawaiian. And not only Hawaiian for everybody else, but he came over to me with these two special shell lays that he gave me, one for me and one for Ron, that he put on me. And I'm going to get through this without crying.
Yeah.
He whispered in my ear, quite a bit. And I didn't actually know what the words meant, but it was incredibly comforting.
Mm.
And then we got on these, it was like two canoes that are tied together with I don't know what that's called, but I'd never been on one of those things before in my life, didn't know how to get on it. And of course I wore a dress, which was really interesting with me trying to get on it. But quite a few of us got on there, and so many people had brought like grocery bags full of beautiful Hawaiian flowers from their yards. And so we had those on there too. And Sheena, my friend who arranged for this, had arranged for those things that go up in the air and take pictures. I can't think what they're called. What?
Drone?
Drones, thank you. For a couple of drones to be there to go up in the air and follow the whole thing out. And we went out in the water, and our insurance agent had a surfboard, and he came out on his surfboard and was able to pass the ashes from one canoe to the other back and forth because it was too far to reach, so that everybody that went out would be able to take part in that. And as we did the ashes, then we put all the flowers out into the water too. And they had these beautiful pictures from the drone where you could see everything just float away. It was, and they recorded it with beautiful music in the background, and it was just fabulous. And then when we went to the mainland, to Agape, I was able to, of course, Michael talked because he was a friend of Ron, and another friend, Reverend Deborah Johnson from the Bay Area.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were friends as kids. Her dad was Ron's scout leader when he was a kid, and so they've been friends forever. So Reverend Deborah came down and talked, and Reverend Greta, I always say her last name wrong, Sashida, talked, and Ricky Byers sang, and she sang "Let My Soul Surrender," which is like my favorite all-time song. It was beautiful. And then to her music, my stepson from when I was married to Jacques is a professional bassoonist, and his wife is also a professional French horn player and also plays piano. And when we got married kind of suddenly. We've been together, I think, 6 years, and it was interesting because I never felt unmarried to Jacques. So it was kind of hard for me to get married to Ron, even though we were in love and had been together for a long time. But on December 26, 1910, when I woke up and looked at the calendar, I said, you know what? New Year's Day this year is going to be 1111. Wouldn't that be a neat day for an anniversary? And Ron said, I'll make the arrangements. So we got married kind of suddenly.
You can't miss a chance like that.
And we hadn't arranged for music. I just didn't think about it. We had an outdoor ceremony. It was beautiful, but we hadn't arranged for music. And Stephen and Jen, his wife, came, and they asked Ron. I was getting ready, so I didn't hear the conversation, but they asked Ron if he had some music, and he said, well, no. And he said, well, we've got our bassoon and French horn in the car if you want us to come in and play. So they did. And it was beautiful for our wedding. So when they lived in Los Angeles. So I called them when we went over, and I said, would it be possible for you to play for us there? So they did. And so it's kind of the beginning and ending sort of a thing that kind of pulled it all together. And it was quite lovely. So the services were entirely different. I never expected to have two, but I'm so glad we did, because it served the needs of so many people. And then pulling that up to right now, my sister died kind of unexpectedly on Monday. And my friend Rose, who had come over from the mainland for Ron's ash scattering service here, was talking to me on the phone, and I was having kind of a hard time. And she said, you need to do something just for you, because I'm not going to be able to go under the circumstances with flying and everything right now. I can't go to the mainland for a service.
Right.
And she said, remember how beautiful it was what we did for Ron. So I thought about that, and I called a friend and asked him if he would mind taking me to the beach because I just didn't feel like driving. And then I went around my yard and picked like one of each of all the different beautiful flowers I have in my yard. And I took them out to a beautiful bay called La Perouse, where there's no hardly any sand. It's all lava, black lava, pieces of black lava rocks all over the place. And it, I love putting in the flowers in the water. It just was, the water was so clear since we don't have any tourists here. I was taking pictures of the flowers in the water, and it looked like they were laying on the lava. And I realized it was because the water was so incredibly clear. So I took some pictures with the bubbles that had come in with some waves so that you could see that the flowers were floating in the water, not just lying down on the rocks. And then I just stood there for a while, looking out and watching the flowers and being silent. And Vic, the guy that took me to the beach, tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked over at him and he pointed down. So I looked down at my foot, and this butterfly had landed on my foot. So and I got a picture of it, which was
Perfect.
amazing that I could actually get that picture, and it meant the world to me. So there's all sorts of ways to celebrate and remember people, and it doesn't have to be a certain way. And I absolutely agree with you about all the sad services that are out there now, that it's a good thing to think about before the time comes if you can. But when it's sudden, like it was with Linda, the absolutely perfect thing happened. I just feel so good about it. I've got special pictures, and I even wrote my blog about it this week because it's so deep for me.
Well, one of the main reasons why I needed to do this thing with my mom is because majority of the people I've lost died suddenly,
Mhm.
unexpectedly, suddenly, with no preparation. And the two that were the closest to me, my Jimmy and my Carl, um, I wasn't able to do for them what they had asked me to do.
Mm.
Jimmy and I had talked years before. We had a plan. We were both, it was a long story, but anyway, we had this plan, and he had made me promise that I would sing a Carpenter song at his funeral. And when he died suddenly, and it was just devastating, and his mom really needed a Catholic mass. Like, she needed that for her. And the Carpenters don't really fit into a Catholic mass. So I was able to sing the song just at a different venue. With my friend Carl, we had a plan. We'd had made this whole plan about what he wanted me to do with his ashes and how it was going to work. And he ended up dying stupidly, and it caused he was in hospice. And so the plan was that he was going to die at his friend's house, and he had another friend set up to cremate him. The ashes were going to come to me in Alaska, and I was going to scatter them. Carl, being the stubborn that he was, with only one functioning lung, decided to go out for a smoke at 4 a.m. and either started coughing and lost his balance or tripped, and he fell and bled out on the
Oh,
floor of the garage, which then of course involved the police, which then of course involved the medical examiner. And Carl had a really unpleasant and non-relationship with his family.
mhm.
And so the medical examiner, the coroner, was trying to find out who his next of kin was. And everybody was saying, there isn't one. Talk to Rachel. So he called me and asked me, and I said, there isn't one. The ashes are supposed to come to me. And he said, I have to verify that. And unfortunately, in his verification process, he found out that Carl's sister was still living. And this is not a person that I can say anything kind about, which is hard for me. It's hard for me. I can see the good and the God in everyone. This woman tests every bit of my ability to do that. And She left his body in the morgue for over 32 days. She would not cooperate with the wishes that he had had. I mean, they hadn't been in touch with each other in over 30 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
with no reason for her to be involved. And but because she took control, and he was cremated. His ashes disappeared. When I tried to track them down, the chances are good they ended up in a dumpster somewhere. The medical examiner actually called me to apologize for
Wow.
listening to me. He said I should have just let you, I should have believed you.
Yeah.
You know, I forgive you. And yeah, you should have. And please don't ever do this to anybody again. And so there's this sense of incompletion. And I have that with so many. My friend Amy, who was killed in New Orleans it was New Year's Eve, people were firing guns in the air, forgetting that gravity works,
Mm.
and hit her at the top of her head and took her out, and she was gone. And so with all of that in my background, when my mom and I were at these funerals, I just said, we need to write everything down. And I tell this to all of my friends now. Write it down. It doesn't need to be notarized. It doesn't need to be legal. It doesn't even need, like, no official. Just have something written and keep it on your desktop, or like mine, I print out every year. I update it. I print it out and I send it to 3 people. And I'm like, you're in charge of this. It has all my passwords, all my all my information. It has what I want. It has last words to people, because we don't know when that moment's going to come. We just don't always know. We don't have the privilege always of being able to say goodbye.
Mhm.
And I couldn't let that happen with my mom. And she gets it, because she knew all of these wonderful people in my life that were gone suddenly. Her heart broke with me over the whole issue with Carl and his ashes. And she sat with me at Jimmy's funeral and was like, you should be singing the Carpenter song, so my mom knows. So those kinds of things, like, I think it's important to talk about it and to prepare for it, not in a morbid
No.
way. For years and years, up until the time I was 30, my plan was I was going to end my life when I was 30. I was living with depression. I still do. At that time, it was unmanageable. And my plan was, look, I'll give myself till 30 and then I'm out. And so every day, I am blessed to be here. And there is nothing morbid or morose about what I'm talking about. It's really just preparing and planning so that those of us who are left can do something good and
Mhm.
can feel that love, can experience that butterfly, can, do our town, that we can have those. Because without preparation, we're all just kind of going, I don't know what to do. And we're grieving, and it's horrible. It's
Mhm.
horrible,
Yeah,
you know.
especially right with that fresh grief. It's like, what do you want to do about this? And it's like, I don't want to talk about it right now. But if you've got it planned ahead of time and you can just hand a
Mm.
piece of paper to somebody, then that makes a huge difference.
My mom was, so my mom met my dad, she was 15 and he was 19. And they
Wow.
dated for 4 years, and then they got married. And she was 42 when he died. He was 48. And she had gone from her dad's house to my dad's house. She'd never, I don't think she'd even written a check, you know? And so, he died suddenly, and people were asking her things, and she was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do. Like, I don't even know. She had 4 daughters, 2 in college. She was like, what are we going to do here? And I remember a couple of days, maybe a week or so after he died, the refrigerator died. And she was like, I've never bought a refrigerator. I don't know what to do. She called her dad. He came up from Florida. There was like this whole to do, and we bought a new refrigerator. But it was, yeah, in that fresh grief, it's like, don't ask me anything. Don't ask, when Jimmy died, I remember I was at work and I got a phone call, and I just walked into my boss's office. I was a mess. And I said, I have to leave here. I have to go home. I can't. I was working as a receptionist. And I said, I can't receive people right now. Like, I can't be that person. I just have to leave. I said, if you have to fire me, that's okay, but I can't be here. I had to somehow get myself home. And I think I pretty much just curled up into a ball and just cried because I didn't know how I was going to, I didn't know how I was going to continue.
Yes, that makes it so hard.
Because I just want to say one thing about the butterfly moment, because I know people think this stuff is kind of woo-woo. Well, hopefully not the people who listen to your channel, but some people think it's woo-woo. But Maddie, my dog, is what is known as a drop-in. She's a soul center. And so every so often I'll be sitting with her and she'll walk over to me and she'll just look at me and I'll know that it's Jimmy or my friend Michael or my dad. And they'll just like drop in. And it's really lovely. Not all animals are like this, but Maddie is definitely. And when we were first talking, when we were talking about the guys, she was bumping her head into me.
Oh,
I know that she knows that we're talking about them. So I love moments like that, the butterfly moment that you had and Maddie's moments. I've had moments where feathers have dropped out of the sky and just landed on me. I'm like, hello, hi.
mhm.
The veil gets really thin and yeah, they're around.
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely feel that. I'm sure that much of the guidance from my book, it was inspired, because sometimes I just sit down at the computer and I wasn't even thinking about it. I just typing,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
those places in particular hardly had any editing at all, because they came out perfect. So
Nice.
I really understand what you're saying there. Um, well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed talking with you. I'm looking forward to sharing this with people, and um, I'm sure that what we've said here today is going to inspire people in one way or another, and that's kind of the whole point here.
I will say, I want to share just one last thing that because I live with depression, it used to be that I would spend a lot of time in sadness and missing and regret and loss and I felt like I kept the people who I'd lost, they were like anchors, like just dragging me.
Mhm.
And when I made the shift on my 30th birthday, I decided to stay alive. I had a meditation summit with my dad and God, and we negotiated my new contract. And one of the things that my dad said to me in that moment was, things are still going to be rough, but you're not going to be doing it alone. And I was like, oh, so now instead of something dragging me, my guardian wall and all of these people, I feel them like behind me, holding my back, and like keeping me moving, lifting me. And so it changes the experience of living with depression. Does not have to be, for me,
Mhm.
always dark, terrible sadness. It can be depression and living.
Yes.
That's the key piece, is living with it. And so the guardian wall helps me stay here.
Wow. Such a beautiful idea. I remember when you first, I think you joined one of my groups, and you shared a picture of what was a wall at that time instead of the bigger space that it takes now. And I thought, that is so beautiful. So it's really neat to see it growing. And I know the more growth it has, the more support it gives you. So that's just such a beautiful concept to do that.
It's a good way to balance. It's a good
Yeah,
way.
that's great.
Well, thank you so much for letting me talk about it.
Oh, I'm glad you did. I'm just thrilled with this. I think it's really special. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel that.
Okay, well, it's been a great talk, and look forward to working with you more, and doing more talks to share. Always
So
helping people along the way.
we got it. That's how what Ram Dass says. We're all just walking each other home. That's
That's
what
right.
this is.
Oh, that's perfect. I read his book by that name. It's really, really good. So, okay. Well, aloha.
Aloha.